I found the second wedding ring in my husband's truck 3 days after his funeral. Not in a box. Not hidden under clothes. Not buried deep where a guilty man would put it. It was sitting in the cup holder, shining in the morning sun, like it wanted me to see it. For a few seconds, I just stood there in our driveway, holding my breath. The house behind me was quiet. The kind of quiet that comes after people bring casseroles, whisper sorry, and drive away feeling lucky it was not their life that had broken in half. My husband, Grant Miller, had been dead for 72 hours. Everyone in Briar Ridge, Virginia, kept telling me I was brave. They said it at church. They said it at the grocery store. They said it at the cemetery while the wind pushed dead leaves across his grave. But bravery had nothing to do with it. I was numb. Grant had died when his truck went off Miller Bridge on a rainy Thursday night. That was the story the police told me. That was the story I believed, until I opened his truck and found a ring that did not belong to me. It was a simple gold band, thinner than Grant's, too small for his hand. Inside, there was an engraving. "Always yours," My own wedding ring said, "Forever Grant." I turned the gold band in my palm and felt something inside me wake up. Not grief, not yet anger. Something colder. Something that opened its eyes in the dark and paid attention. Grant had not only left me, he had left me a question, and I was going to answer it. For 18 years, I thought I knew my husband. Grant was the kind of man people trusted before he even opened his mouth. He had warm brown eyes, a slow smile, and the kind of voice that made bad news sound temporary. He sold insurance at his father's old office on Main Street, coached Little League, fixed neighbors' gutters, and always knew who needed help before they asked. People called him dependable. I called him home. Back then, Grant looked at me like I was the answer to every question he had never known how to ask. That is the dangerous thing about being lonely when you are young. You can mistake being rescued for being loved. Then, around year 11, things started changing. Not all at once. People think betrayal announces itself with lipstick on a collar or a strange perfume on a shirt. Sometimes it comes slowly, wearing normal clothes. If I asked what was wrong, he would kiss my forehead and say I worried too much. Then he would leave the room. I learned to swallow my questions because I did not want to be one of those wives. The suspicious kind, the bitter kind, the kind people pity. So I cleaned houses, paid bills, visited my mother, and told myself every marriage had seasons. I did not know mine was entering winter. The day after I found the ring, I took it to my kitchen table and laid it beside my own. The 2 gold circles sat there like proof of 2 different lives. I wanted to throw Grant's things into the yard. I wanted to scream until every neighbor came outside and saw the perfect widow falling apart. Instead, I made coffee. Then I opened his laptop. Grant had never been good with passwords. For years, his password was my birthday. When that did not work, I tried his mother's. Then the name of his old dog. Nothing. Finally, I typed Forever Grant. The laptop opened. Men like Grant always thought they were complicated. Most were not. They were just careless where they felt safe. His email was clean. Too clean. No suspicious messages. No hotel confirmations. No secret love notes. But there was a folder called Policy Drafts. And inside were scanned documents for his insurance clients. I was about to close it when one file name caught my eye. Lena M. Beneficiary update. My hands went cold. My name is Lena Miller. I opened the file. It was a life insurance policy. Mine. I stared at the numbers until they blurred. $500,000. Grant was listed as primary beneficiary. The date on the change was 6 months earlier. My signature was at the bottom. Only I had never signed it. I sat back from the table. The house seemed to tilt around me. I clicked through more files. There were policies I recognized from people in town. old women, single men, small business owners. My mother's assisted living policy had Grant's office listed as contact. Then I found another folder. It was locked. The folder name was not romantic. It was not dramatic. It was just 3 letters. RDM. I tried every password I knew. Nothing worked. Then my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number appeared on the screen. Stop looking, Lena. No greeting. No explanation. Just those 3 words. I stared at the message so long the screen went dark. Then it lit up again. You do not know what he did. I did not call the police right away. That is the part I used to judge other women for in crime shows. I would sit on my couch and say, why doesn't she just go to the police? But when it is your life, nothing feels simple. The officer who handled Grant's accident was a man named Deputy Paul Haskins. He had gone to school with Grant. He cried at the funeral. His wife brought me chicken pot pie. Briar Ridge was small. Everybody knew everybody. Everybody owed somebody a favor. And Grant had been loved. I had a ring from another woman, a strange text, and a forged signature. That was not nothing, but it was also not enough. If I walked into the sheriff's office, shaking and accusing my dead husband, they would tell me grief made people imagine things. So I did what I knew how to do. I cleaned. Evidence. I got a notebook and wrote everything down: dates, names, passwords, file names, policy numbers. Every thought that came into my head. Then I made copies. I printed the insurance policy with my forged signature. I photographed the second ring from every angle. I saved screenshots of the text. I put one set in a folder and hid it behind the loose panel under the laundry room sink. Grant had always said I was too careful. For the first time, I was glad. The next morning, I drove to his office before sunrise. Miller Family Insurance sat between a bakery and a closed-down shoe store. The front windows still had black ribbons taped to the glass. Someone had placed flowers by the door. I had a key because I used to clean the office on Sundays. He told me I was no fun anymore. I had forgotten that until I saw the photo. Funny how memory protects you until it cannot. I searched his drawers first. Pens, receipts, business cards. Nothing strange. Then I checked the file cabinet. Most drawers were client folders. The bottom drawer was locked. I went to the supply closet, found a screwdriver, and pried until the old lock popped. Inside were envelopes. Cash. Thousands of dollars, rubber, banded in neat stack. Behind the cash was a small black notebook. The pages were filled with initials, dates, and amounts. Some names I knew right away. EP was Evelyn Porter, a retired teacher whose house I cleaned every other Wednesday. MA was Marcus Allen, who owned the tire shop. DR was Dot Reynolds, my mother's friend from church. Next to each set of initials was a number and a word: delay. Pressure transfer. I did not understand it yet, but I knew I was looking at something ugly. In the back of the drawer, under a packet of envelopes, I found a burner phone. It was dead. I took it, the notebook, and one envelope of cash. Then I put the drawer back the way I found it and locked the office behind me. As I got into my van, I saw a silver Honda parked across the street. There was a woman inside. Dark hair, sunglasses, hands tight on the steering wheel. When she saw me looking, she started the car and drove away. I followed. I did not think. I just followed. She turned onto Route 11, then into the parking lot of an old motel called the Blue Lantern. The kind of place with doors facing the parking lot and curtains that never fully closed. She parked near room 12. I stopped 2 spaces away. She got out slowly, like she knew I was there. She looked younger than me, maybe 32, maybe tired enough to be older. She wore jeans, a black sweater, and no makeup except red lipstick that looked too bright for the gray morning. On her left hand was a pale line, where a ring used to be. She walked to my van and tapped the window. I rolled it down. she said, softly. I told you to stop looking. Her voice matched the text. I looked at her face and knew two things at once. She had loved my husband. And she was afraid of him, even though he was dead. Her name was Mara Daniels. She did not invite me into her room. She told me to drive to a diner 2 towns, over where nobody knew us. We sat in a back booth under a broken ceiling fan. She ordered tea and never drank it. At first, I hated her. I hated the way she looked down when she spoke Grant's name. I hated the way grief sat on her face, like she had earned it. I hated that she had known some version of him I had not been allowed to see. Then she showed me the scar on her wrist. It was thin and white, half hidden under her sleeve. Grant did that, she said. I did not answer. She took a breath and told me everything. Mara had met Grant 2 years earlier when she bought insurance for her small catering business. Her husband had died young, leaving her with debt and a daughter named Sophie. Grant had helped her file claims, reduce payments, and feel less alone. That was how he did it. He did not chase women in bars. He found people standing at the edge of disaster and offered them a hand. By the time they realized the hand was a chain, it was already around them. Mara said Grant told her our marriage was over. He said I was cold, controlling, unstable. He said he stayed with me only because divorce would ruin me. Then he gave Mara a ring and promised he would leave after he fixed one last financial problem. I touched the gold band in my pocket. Always yours, G. My stomach turned. I wanted to call her a fool, but I had been one longer. Then Mara told me about the policies. Grant had been running a fraud scheme through the insurance office. Not alone. That part was important. He had help from a regional claims adjuster named Russell Dean Moore. RDM. Russell approved suspicious beneficiary changes and fast claims in exchange for cash. Grant targeted lonely clients, older clients, clients who trusted him because his last name meant something in town. He forged signatures. He moved money. He pressured people into updates they did not understand. At first, it was just fraud. Then someone died. Evelyn Porter had fallen down her basement stairs last winter. Everyone called it an accident. Mara said Grant collected a finder's fee after the claim paid out to a distant nephew Evelyn barely spoke to. I felt sick. I had cleaned Evelyn's house. I had carried groceries into her kitchen. She used to save magazines for my mother. Mara said Grant became nervous after Evelyn. He started drinking more. He and Russell argued. Grant told Mara he wanted out, but Russell had records, messages, proof of everything. Then Grant did something that changed everything. He put a policy on me. $500,000. Mara said she found out by accident. She saw my name on a folder in Grant's motel room. When she confronted him, he said it was only paperwork. He said he would never hurt me. But she no longer believed him. Neither did I. I asked her why she warned me after Grant died. She looked out the window at the highway. Because Grant did not drive off that bridge by accident. The words moved through me like ice water. Mara said Grant had called her that Thursday night in a panic. He said Russell was going to kill him and make it look like a drunk driving accident. Grant wanted to meet Mara at the Blue Lantern, grab cash, and leave town. He never arrived. The police said he was alone. The rain was heavy. The bridge rail was old. The truck went into the river. But Mara had a voicemail from Grant that proved he was afraid. She played it for me in the booth. Grant's voice came through small and shaking. Mara, listen. If anything happens tonight, it was Russell. He knows about Lena. He knows I changed my mind. I should have told her. God help me, I should have told her. The message ended with a sound like tires on wet road, and Grant shouting one word. No. I sat frozen. I had thought the worst truth was that my husband betrayed me. The worst truth was that someone else had killed him before I could demand answers. and the worst truth of all was still waiting. Mara leaned forward and whispered, "Russell knows you have the ring." I asked how. She said, "Because I told him." I left the diner before I slapped her. I got in my van and locked the doors. She stood outside in the cold, saying my name again and again. I drove home shaking so hard I had to pull over twice. By noon, the grief casseroles on my porch were covered in frost. By 1, I had packed the evidence folder, the burner phone, the notebook, the ring, and a change of clothes. By 2, Deputy Haskins knocked on my door. He was wearing his uniform, but his face looked too soft for official business. He said, "Lena, we need to talk." I kept the chain on the door. He looked past me into the house. He asked if I had been to Grant's office. I lied. He sighed like I had disappointed him. Then he said, "You are going through a lot. Sometimes grief makes people do strange things." There it was, the sentence I had expected. I asked if I was under arrest. He said no. I said good, and closed the door in his face. He stayed on the porch for a full minute. Then he left. I watched from the bedroom window as he walked to his cruiser. Before he got in, he took out his phone and made a call. That was when I understood. Grant had not been protected by one bad man. He had been protected by a town that liked its heroes simple and its victims quiet. I could not fight that with tears. I needed proof so clear that nobody could bury it. The burner phone became my first real clue. I bought a charger from a gas station and plugged it in at a motel outside Roanoke. When the screen came alive, there were no names in the contacts, only numbers. Most messages were deleted, but one thread remained. The contact was saved as R. The last message from Grant was sent 3 hours before he died. I want out. No more policies. No more clients. Lena is not part of this. The reply came 2 minutes later. You do not get out. Meet me at the bridge. I took photos of everything with my own phone. Then I backed them up to a new email account Grant did not know existed. Russell did not know existed, and nobody in Briar Ridge could access. For the first time since the funeral, I slept. Not well. Not peacefully, but enough to dream. In the dream, Grant was standing on Miller Bridge in the rain. He looked young, like the man from the county fair. He held out the blue stuffed bear he had won me and said, "I am sorry." When I woke up, I was crying. That made me angry all over again. I did not want to miss him. I wanted betrayal to be clean. I wanted Grant to become a monster so I could hate him without pain. But marriage is not a light switch. You can love who someone was, hate what they did, and still ache because they are gone. That morning, I called the only person I trusted outside Briar Ridge. My cousin Andrea lived in Richmond and worked as a paralegal for a federal defense attorney. She had always disliked Grant, which annoyed me for 18 years and saved me on day 4 after his funeral. I drove to her apartment with the evidence in a grocery bag. Andrea listened without interrupting. She spread the papers across her kitchen table, read the notebook, replayed the voicemail, and looked at me with a face I had never seen before. "Fear," she said. "Lena, this is not just fraud. This is organized. And if a deputy came to your door already, you cannot take this to the local sheriff." She made 3 copies of everything. 1 went to her boss. 1 went into a safe deposit box. 1 went to a retired FBI agent her boss knew. I asked if that meant we were safe. Andrea said, "No. It means if something happens to you, more people will know why." But it was something. Then she asked me a question I was not ready for. "Do you want justice or do you want revenge?" I said, "Is there a difference?" She said yes. Justice exposes the truth. Revenge makes the truth hurt the people who buried it. I thought of Grant's ring, Mara's scar, Evelyn Porter, my forged signature, my mother sitting in assisted living, trusting a policy that Grant may have touched. I said, "I want both." Andrea smiled for the first time. Then we have to make them confess. The plan began with my mother. Grant visited her every Sunday. She loved him, called him her good son. Sometimes she remembered him better than she remembered me. That part hurt more than I expected. When I visited, she was sitting by the window, folding tissues into tiny squares. She asked where Grant was. I told her he was gone. She patted my hand and said, "Men always go somewhere." Then she looked at me closely and whispered, "He came with the tall man?" My heart stopped. "What tall man?" She frowned, trying to catch the memory before it floated away. "The one with the shiny shoes." Grant said, "Sign, Ruthie. Just sign so Lena won't worry." I opened my bag with shaking hands and pulled out copies of her policy forms. My mother's signature had been changed 3 months earlier. The beneficiary was no longer me. It was a charitable foundation I had never heard of, the Miller Community Renewal Fund. Grant's family name, Russell's shiny shoes. My mother touched the paper and began to cry because she knew something was wrong, but could not hold the shape of it. That was the moment my revenge stopped being about a cheating husband. It became about every person they had used because they thought weakness made people easy to steal from. Andrea's retired FBI contact was a man named Coleman. He had a slow voice and tired eyes. He told us not to play hero. Then he told us exactly what kind of proof would make federal investigators listen. Recordings, money movement, names, pattern. The black notebook gave us pattern. The forged policies gave us names. The burner phone gave us motive. But we needed Russell Dean more alive, talking, and greedy. So we gave him what greedy men always want. We gave him fear wrapped in opportunity. Mara became the bait. I hated that part. I hated needing her. I hated sitting across from her in Andrea's apartment while she cried quietly and said she would do anything if it protected Sophie. But I also saw something in Mara that reminded me of myself. Not innocence. Not exactly. More like a woman waking up in a room she had helped build and finally seeing the locks on the door. She called Russell from a prepaid phone while Coleman recorded. Her voice shook at first. Then it steadied. She told him I had Grant's notebook and was planning to go to the police. Russell cursed so loudly I heard it across the room. Mara said she could get the notebook from me, but she wanted money and a safe place to leave with Sophie. Russell asked where she was. She said she would only meet in public. He laughed. That laugh told me everything I needed to know about him. He thought women were doors. Push hard enough, and they opened. They agreed to meet at a storage facility outside Briar Ridge the next evening. Unit 47. Grant had rented it under a business account. Coleman contacted people he still trusted. Not local police, federal investigators, real ones. But he warned us that unless Russell said enough, or showed up with documents or money, it could still fall apart. The law is not like the movies. Truth does not win just because it is true. Truth needs evidence, and evidence needs timing. The next day felt longer than the whole year before it. I returned to Briar Ridge like nothing had changed. I opened my business email, canceled 2 cleaning appointments, answered 3 condolence messages. Then I drove to Grant's office and parked in front where everyone could see me. I wanted Russell to know I was not hiding. Inside, I sat in Grant's chair. For 18 years, I had been the woman behind him. The wife in the framed photo. The name on the holiday cards. The one who remembered birthdays, made apology calls, and smiled when Grant told the same story twice. Now I sat in his chair and opened every drawer. Under the bottom of the center drawer, taped flat against the wood, was a small memory card. Grant had hidden it well. Not well enough. I put it in my pocket and left without checking it, because sometimes survival means not stopping to satisfy curiosity. At 5 that evening, I drove to the storage facility. The sun was low. The air smelled like cold metal and pine. Rows of orange doors stretched into the distance. Mara was already there with Sophie in the car. Sophie was 9 years old, with braids, pink glasses, and a book pressed to her chest. She looked at me through the window with the serious face children get when adults have been lying badly. My anger softened for 1 second. Then Russell arrived. He was taller than I expected, with silver hair, a camel coat, and polished shoes that flashed under the security lights. He looked less like a criminal than a bank president. That made him more frightening. He did not come alone. Deputy Haskins stepped out of the passenger side. I felt the world narrow. I had suspected it, seeing it still hit like a fist. Russell smiled at Mara, then looked at me. Well, he said, "The grieving widow joins the party." I wanted to answer with something brave. Instead, I kept my mouth shut. That was the hardest thing I learned during those days. Silence can be a weapon if you make the right person fill it. Russell did. He told me Grant had always been weak. Smart enough to make money, too soft to keep making it. He said Grant got sentimental about me. About Mara. About old ladies who should have read before they signed. He said all of this while walking toward Unit 47. Like we were discussing bad weather. Mara asked for the money. Russell nodded to Haskins, who opened the trunk and pulled out a duffel bag. That was good. Money was good. Then Russell looked at me and said, "Where is the notebook?" I said, "Somewhere, safe." His smile disappeared. He stepped close enough that I could smell mint on his breath. "You think you are the first wife to find papers. She does not understand. You think anyone will believe you over men with badges, licenses, and family names." I thought of my mother folding tissues. I thought of Evelyn on the basement floor. I thought of Grant's voice on the voicemail, scared at the end. I said, "I think you talk too much." For 1 second, his face changed. Then Unit 47 opened from the inside. Coleman stepped out, holding a gun low, with 2 federal agents behind him. Russell froze. Deputy Haskins reached for his weapon and was on the ground before he cleared the holster. It happened fast and slow at the same time. Shouts, metal doors rattling. Sophie's crying from the car. Mara covering her mouth. Russell's polished shoes stepping backward into spilled gravel. And me standing there with my hands shaking, realizing I was not afraid anymore. Russell did not confess in that moment. Men like him never believe the wall is real until their face hits it. Then Andrea called. She had opened the memory card from Grant's desk. It held videos. Grant had recorded Russell in the office months earlier, bragging about the scheme, arguing about my policy, and admitting Evelyn Porter had been pushed. Pushed. I had to sit down when Andrea said that word. Pushed down her own basement stairs for insurance money. For a while, I could not hear anything except blood in my ears. Grant was guilty of many things. But Evelyn's death belonged to Russell. And maybe, in his cowardly, broken way, Grant had tried to stop the machine he helped build before it swallowed me too. That did not forgive him. But it changed the shape of the wound. The town learned the truth on a Monday morning. Not all of it. Not right away. Federal cases take time. Reporters use careful words. Lawyers say alleged until the evidence becomes too heavy to lift. But Briar Ridge knew. People saw Russell taken from his Richmond office. They saw Deputy Haskins suspended, then arrested. They saw agents carry boxes out of Miller family insurance while the black ribbons still hung in the window for Grant. By noon, my phone would not stop ringing. People who had called Grant a good man now wanted me to tell them he was not involved. People who had whispered about me, closing the door on Deputy Haskins, now said they always knew something was wrong. That is another thing I learned. Most people do not stand with truth. They stand near whoever looks safest after truth arrives. I did not answer the calls. I went to my mother's assisted living home and sat beside her while she slept. Her policy was frozen pending investigation. So were dozens of others. Andrea helped families file complaints. Coleman connected victims to federal advocates. Mara gave her full statement and entered protection with Sophie until the hearings. As for Grant, the papers called him co-conspirator and deceased witness. To me, he was both less and more than those words. He was my husband. He was a liar. He was a criminal. He was a coward. He was the man who taught me how to change a tire, kissed me in hospital waiting rooms, held my hand after every failed pregnancy test, and forged my signature on a policy that could have paid for my death. Try fitting that into one sentence. You cannot. The first court date came 6 months later. I wore a navy dress, my mother's pearl earrings, and no wedding ring. Russell walked into court looking smaller than he had at the storage facility. His hair was still perfect. His suit was still expensive, but his eyes kept moving, searching for doors that were no longer open. Mara testified first. Her voice shook, but she did not stop. Then I testified. I told the truth in plain words, because plain words are harder to twist. I said my husband forged my signature. I said Russell threatened me. I said Deputy Haskins came to my door to scare me off. I said my mother's policy was changed, when she could not understand what she was signing. When Russell's attorney asked if I was angry at my dead husband and looking for someone to blame, I looked at the jury. I said, I am angry at my dead husband. I am also telling the truth. Both things can live in the same room. Nobody spoke for a moment after that. The trial lasted 9 days. Russell was found guilty on fraud, conspiracy, witness intimidation, and charges related to Evelyn Porter's death. Haskins took a deal and admitted he helped cover up Grant's crash. He said Russell forced Grant off the road near Miller Bridge after Grant threatened to expose them. Haskins cried when he said it. I watched without feeling sorry for him. Some tears are only fear leaving the body. The judge gave Russell decades. Not forever, but long enough. Haskins got less, but he lost his badge, his pension, and the respect he had worn like armor. Grant's life insurance payout, the one I was supposed to receive after his death, was tied up because of the investigation. I did not fight for it. I fought for something else. Every dollar from the seized accounts that could be traced to clients went into restitution. It was not enough, but it was something. The Miller Community Renewal Fund was dissolved. The baseball field changed its name. The bridge kept the Miller name because government moves slower than grief, but somebody painted over the sign one night. I never asked who. I just smiled when I drove past it. My revenge was not loud. I did not burn the house down. I did not slash tires. I did not stand over anyone in the dark and make threats. Real revenge, I learned, is often paperwork. It is signatures corrected. Accounts frozen. Names entered into public record. It is a man who thought he owned every room, hearing a cell door close. It is a badge placed in a box forever. It is a woman like Mara walking into sunlight with her daughter, and knowing nobody gets to use her fear as rent anymore. It is my mother getting her policy restored, then forgetting the whole thing by supper, and asking if Grant would visit Sunday. That last part broke me. For months, I did not know what to do with Grant's things. His shirt stayed in the closet. His boots stayed by the garage door. His coffee mug stayed on the second shelf, the one only he could reach without stretching. People told me to move on. I hated that phrase. Move on sounds like leaving a room and closing the door. Grief is not a room. It is weather. Some days it rains even when the sun is out. I held it for a long time. Then I brought down a cardboard box and began sorting. Keep, donate, evidence, throw away. That became the map of my marriage. I donated his suits. I threw away the ring he had given Mara. Then I took my own wedding ring to a jeweler in Richmond. The jeweler asked what I wanted to make from it. A necklace, maybe. A pendant. Something new from something old. I said no. I want it melted. She looked at me carefully and nodded. 2 weeks later, she handed me a small flat charm shaped like a key. It was simple. Gold. Not pretty exactly, but strong. I put it on a chain and wore it under my shirt. Not because I wanted to remember Grant. Because I wanted to remember the door I opened after he was gone. Mara wrote me once from somewhere out west. She did not say where, and I did not ask. The letter said Sophie was doing better. She said she had started baking again. She apologized for every lie and every silence. At the end she wrote, "I hope you get your life back." I folded the letter and sat with that sentence. My life back. For a while, that was what I wanted. The old house. The old trust. The old version of myself who thought love meant safety. But some things do not come back. And maybe they should not. The woman I was before would have handed the strange ring to the sheriff and waited for permission to be believed. The woman I became made copies first. A year after Grant died, I sold the White House, not because I had to, because I wanted to choose a place that had never heard him lie. I bought a smaller house outside Richmond with a porch, 2 maple trees, and a kitchen window that caught the morning sun. I moved my mother to a better facility nearby. I rebuilt my cleaning business under a new name. Lena's fresh start. Maybe it was too obvious. I did not care. On the first night in the new house, I slept on a mattress on the floor because my furniture had not arrived. Rain tapped the windows. For one sharp second, the sound brought me back to Grant's truck, Miller Bridge, and the voicemail ending in a shout. I sat up in the dark, breathing hard. Then I reached for the gold key charm at my throat. I reminded myself where I was, not his house, not his town, not his widow in the way people wanted me to be. Just Lena, alive, free. The next morning, I drove to a lake just after sunrise. The air smelled clean, like wet leaves and mud. I walked to the dock and took out the last thing I had kept hidden in my purse. Grant's wedding ring. I had not worn it. I had not sold it. I had not thrown it away with Mara's ring. For a year, it had sat in a small envelope, waiting for me to decide what it meant. I held it between my fingers and watched light move across the water. I thought I would say something dramatic, something angry, something worthy of a movie ending. But the truth was smaller. I whispered, "I loved you, and you did not deserve the power that gave you." Then I dropped the ring into the lake. It made almost no sound. A tiny splash, a circle widening, then gone. I stood there until the sun was fully up. For the first time in years, nobody was waiting for me to explain, forgive, smile, or stay quiet. So I walked back to my car, opened the door, and looked once at the empty passenger's seat. The old pain was still there, but it no longer drove. I did. And that is the part nobody tells you about revenge. The sweetest ending is not watching them lose everything. It is finally taking back the life they thought they had stolen.